Hello, Alec. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you for the opportunity to come in and interview with you guys.
Not a problem. It's a pleasure to have you here. Now, I'm just going to get started with a few questions for you.
Perfectly fine.
So, first off, I'd like you to discuss a time you had to troubleshoot a technical issue during development.
Ooh. A good time that I've had to troubleshoot an issue that I had during development would be when I had run into a memory leak in one of the games I've been working on. The game was a small horror game that I worked on, and the mechanic I made was a inventory mechanic. That inventory mechanic would fire constantly on a loop, which during game testing turned out to be a bad idea, as that would cause a lot of memory leaks, causing the game to crash, and in some rare cases also blue screening, which was quite unfortunate, as that did mean that sometimes there was some progress and some code that was lost, as either file corruption happened or the actual project files would corrupt, leading to me having to run for my backup, which luckily I did have, so it wasn't too much of an issue. The way I fixed that was simply changing it from firing on loop to simply being whenever a special custom event was fired within an item being picked up or the item being selected, which allowed the game to run a lot smoother as less resources were wasted during runtime.
Perfect. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Next up I'd like you to give me an example of a feature or mechanic in a game you designed that I'm particularly proud of.
Well, again, that would be that said inventory mechanic. It was one that I designed in mind with the horror game. As the horror game, there was a few items I had to collect, and just so the players could keep track in terms of completion, what items they have already collected, what items could be collected, I decided to organize a simple system which would track what items you already had, what items you could get, and the main challenge with designing such a inventory system was getting it to work not just from a mechanics standpoint, but also from a visual standpoint, as you want the user, or the player in this case, to be able to visually see, oh, I have this item, or oh, I do not have this item, or oh, okay, this slot is slightly grayed out. Does that mean that means I have this slot actually in my hand? And with that in mind, another challenge was getting things to display correctly, because I had to work with multiple actual how would I say this? Multiple models and multiple different scales of models. I had to dynamically rescale those models as they were displayed, so that some of them weren't displayed too small and some of them weren't displayed too large. Another issue that I ran into during the development of said mechanic was a visual glitch where different resolutions and different screen sizes would make the actual UI look blurry or out of focus. So fixing that was quite a handful.
I can imagine. Thank you very much. And next up I want you to tell me what you believe sets apart successful games from unsuccessful games.
Successful games aren't necessarily ones that may perform well just purely off of stats when it comes to a player base, how many players keep coming back to playing that game, or how much revenue and profits a game makes, but it's more about the community and what the game does to give a better net positive impact on the world, as a game that's strictly made for making money might help the business grow in terms of, oh, this is a profitable business, more investors, but it may not actually leave any meaningful impacts on the player base. So they will just see, oh, this company has made another cash grab game. They may not want to play games from that company ever again. A good game that comes into mind when thinking about successful games is a game called Warframe. It's quite fun to play. The mechanics there are quite tuned towards player actually being able to be fully in control of the game, but also the impact that it leaves on the world, as for the past 3 years now, as of 2020, consecutively they have made a charity campaign, or helped a charity, should I say, called Conquer Breast Cancer, and all the proceeds from that went to research for breast cancer, obviously rewarding players in-game that have participated in events and also donated with in-game rewards. And another thing that they've done since 2016 is every Christmas they would help out a charity, either just globally, really, to help kids, not necessarily just kids, but people around the world get through Christmas, and in some cases also, like before, help cancer research units, for example, help those people with cancer get through the time of Christmas. But in general, those companies, like Digital Extremes that have made Warframe, they will take player feedback, and instead of saying, oh, there's a bug in this game that allows me to, go Mach 10 speeds across the map, instead of fixing that issue and stopping the players from being able to do so, even though they see a large player base doing that, they'll simply adapt that into a new movement mechanic, for example, called the bullet jump, that allow players to still execute a similar mechanic whilst not being as game-breaking. And yeah, that's all I really have to say about a successful game. Whilst an unsuccessful game would most likely be one that strictly focuses on profits, and whenever they see something that doesn't fit the original design scheme, like again mentioned, an ability to just fly across the map, they would completely cut that out and stop people from using it. And if people used it, they would completely ban them, or in some cases give them temporary bans. And when it comes to charity-funded events, they would strictly be more, again, to make profit. So sometimes companies give full proceeds of those events to the charities, but there have been some cases where there was only a small percentage of the proceeds actually going to charity and the rest just being used for further development of the game, which in turn meant more profit for the company.
I see. Thank you very much. My next question for you is, what's your favorite aspect of game development?
When it comes to game development, it's not so much the actual outcome of the game, seeing the game fully being polished, but it's also the journey. As when you start with a simple project, simple idea, and seeing that come to fruition, that's quite an enjoyable aspect of the game. But on top of that, seeing a community grow around that game and enjoy that game is also quite a big reason why I want to get into game development. As seeing my small, simple idea, or for example, just a simulator, like a cooking simulator, grow into quite a large community base that want to play that sort of game, and during the actual course of development, they're actively wanting the game to be produced, they're giving me feedback. But then in the end, after that's finished, after the game has been given out to the community, they play that game and they enjoy that game, even though it might be just a simple, quite easy to make game. Seeing that people still take enjoyment out of that game is quite a big thing that brings a smile to my face, but also helps me develop better games.
Wonderful, that's brilliant to hear. Thank you very much. And my final question for you today is, if you were stranded on a desert island with only one type of fruit to eat forever, which fruit would you choose and why?
A fruit that comes to mind immediately, and one I might probably always choose, is a coconut. As a coconut, well, the inside of a coconut usually holds water, quite good for sustaining yourself when it comes to drinking something, having drinkable water, because nothing says that the seawater can be drank without prior steps. So having drinkable, easy to gather, drinkable water is a good way to go, but also having food, because the coconut flesh can be eaten. And as well as that, the actual shell and husks of the coconut can be used as tools in a way, as you can use the husks and braid them together for rope, use the shells as bowls, for example, or to even make very primitive tools to make shelter out of said husks as well, and shells, but also to make clothing, and maybe even a raft to leave the island, or just to go fishing and maybe find not just fruit to eat, but also some meat, and maybe even start a few fires, keep yourself warm, and in many cases just survive and have a good time on the island. As you'll be able to know that, well, you have coconuts, you have a way to make tools, you have a way to make yourself shelter, you have a way to eat, to drink, you also clothe yourself, which I feel like is quite a necessity to just basic survival.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Oleg. It's been a pleasure to have you here today.
It's been a pleasure to be in this interview. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.